gentlemen, of all the privileges I've had in my life, a great privilege is happening tonight. This is a historic event musically, and you people must be the cream of the crop for music appreciators. That needs to be said. I want to introduce Nick Lloyd on keyboards.
Final version. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my run, let's camera action.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Yeah, this is my run, let's camera action, I'm ready to go.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Tom Ficklin Show. And again, thank you for tuning in and participating in this most important discussion. First and foremost, I would like to give praise to our beloved brother, Tom Ficklin. May he rest in peace. And we miss you, our good brother. And rest in peace.
Yes, we do.
Again, my name is Gary Tinney. I'm honored and privileged to host today's show. Today, I would like to introduce Ms. Denise Page and Mr. John Austin. They will share their most fond memories growing up in our treasured community we call New Haven. Remember our beloved sister, Minnie Ripperton, back down memory lane. All right, Ms. Page, please tell us a little bit about the project and the current projects you're working on and your future projects. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us, Gary. So the project that reflects the title of today's show is Forgotten Pioneers, Ancestral Stories of the Dixwell Community. And that was a project that was presented in September at CONCAT. And as the two of you know, you, Gary, and John Austin were significant contributors to that program and to the success of that program. And I'll talk more about that in a moment, but I wanted to bring John in and have him share a little bit about who he is and how he came to be part of that project. And then we'll tell you a little more about it. So, John?
Okay, I'm on. Good morning, everyone. I felt privileged when Denise asked me to be a part of the program. But, I wasn't born in New Haven, but I was raised here, and I grew to love the city. I wasn't from the Dixwell neighborhood. I was raised in Newhall, the Newhallville section of town, but I had a lot of connections in the Dixwell area. A lot of my friends growing up were from the Dixwell area, and those friends that I grew up with, they're still my friends today. Today, I had ties. I worked in the Dixwell community. I coached sports, and a lot of the kids came from the Dixwell community. I had interaction with Gary through my sports activities, and because of those activities, I developed some lifelong relationships. I love the kids that I used to coach, and it gives me an honor to as the kids left the program, they come back and they recall some of the little small things that we used to do on the baseball field in practice. And Tom Ficklin, when he was a part of that, he was a part of that too. Tom Ficklin, he was always a part of my life and growing, especially with the kids. Tom used to get baseball tickets. He used to have the West Haven Yankees used to play here at the Yale Field, and they had some outstanding players that used to play AA baseball at the time. Ron Dowling, he was a great pitcher for the Yankees, and some more great pitchers that went on to start for the Yankees. And I was able to take my kids from the Newhallville area, the Dixwell area, kids who never would have had a chance to see that type of baseball and programs. And I had to take my kids to those baseball games, and those kids used to have a ball of baseball games, and it's nothing like eating a hot dog at a baseball field. And the kids really enjoyed it, and that's from those connections with the youth and adults in the area. it gave me a special feeling for the love of New Haven. I put no city in the country above New Haven behind the relationships I have with the people I grew up with and the connection. And I really enjoyed that connection. And once again, thank you.
Yeah. And John,
my life.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Gary.
No, I just wanted to mention too that I don't even know if you realize, even though we were involved in Walter Pop Smith Little League for many years, and we still are in some capacity. But one, I wanted to mention that Tom Ficklin was very instrumental in the improvements that have recently been.
Recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to make sure people knew that.
Yeah. Tom was like, he reminded me of Booker T. Washington. He was a noble man, but he was a man who could eat at the White House with the aristocrats, but then he can go eat at the same table with the slaves. That's the type of person Tom had. This great connection with downtown New Haven, but he had a connection in the community. And
Absolutely.
That was family. Tom married my wife's cousin,
Julia.
Yeah. I just contacted Julia because Tom's replacement, and as an alderperson in our ward, we had a voting 2 days ago, and I talked to Julia about the prospective candidates who was running to take Tom's place. And we had an extensive conversation. Tom's replacement, and Tom was special.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Yeah.
With Tom, not only did I have a personal relationship with Tom, my whole household had a personal relationship with Tom.
Yeah. He was John. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
You can easily talk to Tom. Tom was a down to earth person, and that's people like that. That's what makes me feel great about our city.
Yeah.
Yes.
John, when you bring up, I'm sorry, Gary. I don't want to.
I just wanted to just piggyback on what John just said too. Mm-hmm. But that's when you talk about our community and our city, those are the relationships that were formed over the years. And like you said, New Haven's been a rich part of that. You talk about the village, and New Haven is that village. And this project speaks to what we're about. It highlights the great relationship, the great families. So many people came from here that have been have had a large impact on
national stages. They've been on national stages. Yeah.
So
you and John both bring up really why I wanted to do the project, because so I was born in New Haven, and I lived the first few years of my life in the Dixwell neighborhood. I was gone by 6 or 7 years old, but I never lost a connection to that. I had cousins that lived on Webster Street, and my best friend in the world at the time, Gary, was your family's next door neighbor. She lived at 42 Southwest, and I know your family was at 44 Southwest. Mm-hmm. So I stayed connected to the community through her. Sherry, trying to remember her maiden name, Sherry Wilson. Wilson was her maiden name, and she has a few other names, but that's Sherry Wilson is how many remember her, or Sherry Hunter, and such great memories. And at the time that I was a kid, my dad was alderman, which of course I didn't know. He was just my dad, and everywhere we went, everybody spoke to him, but he was friendly, so I didn't know until like later that he was alderman. And Charles Twyman, who John you mentioned in our presentation. Charles Twyman was my dad's best friend, and he happened, I was at Winchester School for kindergarten, first grade, and half of second grade. And when Uncle Charlie was there, he was at that time what we called the vice principal, not the assistant principal. He was the only Black administrator in the New Haven public schools. Now, I mention that because we always had a theme in our family that the first Black or female anything takes more stuff than anybody that comes behind them. But the goal is not to be the first, is to make sure that you absolutely are not the last. And I feel like that was instilled in me from a little girl because of the roles those two people played in my, even though it had no significance to me. It was just my dad and Uncle Charlie. But it was a community that embraced us. Ella Scantleberry lived on our street. Across the street from me were the Bates. Miriam Bates was a teacher at Dwight School. The Horners were 2 doors down from them, and Billy Horner, Senior and Junior, were the first on our police force. So that was something. It was just, that was natural to me. Nobody was running around saying this is unique or pay attention. They modeled the standards and the community service that I hope we've carried forward. I wanted to do this project because I had begun to feel that of two things, that maybe younger generations of color weren't or aren't aware of how long we've drawn strength from communities like Dixwell. And also people who lived in Dixwell who were struggling, and as you two pointed out in our presentation so eloquently, y'all didn't know you were struggling. Okay, that was, you didn't run around and say, "Oh, we poor." Okay, the richness of what everybody else gave, I'm sure, is what gave you the platform to achieve the success that both of you, I know, have achieved as adults, and also give back to the community. I just wanted young people to know that, yeah, you can be without material resources, but if we strengthen and hold on to the richness of who we are as family and culturally, those things we didn't have as young people are overshadowed by the things that we do have if we take advantage of that. So that was one reason I wanted to do it. The other reason I wanted to do it, I had stumbled on doing some research on my family, and I had stumbled upon a fact that just intrigued me. And I always say to people when I share this, it didn't intrigue me because it was my family. It intrigued me because it was a Black family, and it could have been anybody's family. But I was looking at the 1880 census of New Haven on Ashland Street. And on Ashland Street in 1880 lived one Black family. That was my mother's father and his father. And on that street, there was one homeowner, and that was my mother's father. And on that street, there was one family, because the census marked this back then, that was literate. They could read, write, and speak English. And they were the only family on that street. And I thought, do we, as Black people recognize that as far back as 1880, Black people were making strides like that with everything that was against us at the time? And that, I just have to admit, for me, the most striking thing was that they were the only Blacks and the only one who could claim that on our streets. And I thought, larger society tells so many stories to make us feel less than. And I just looked at this and I thought, well, whoa, look at here. Look at all the advantages that the other culture has access to and all the strikes against us. And this Black family on this one street in 1880 is just representative of who we are as Black people across the country and what we're achieving despite odds. So that's why when I chose this project, I chose the year 1880 because I knew we had one example to at least bring forward to young people and say, even in the period of enslavement, look what we've been able to do, because we yoke ourselves, I think, to something larger than material resources. While we all want those, but it's the right. But it's the connecting to something larger, and families have strengthened us through the generations. And I just want that story out there, and all the pioneers, all the names that some of which were mentioned in our presentation, and I know we're going to do a part 2. And there's so many people who were silent shepherds and mentors. So,
and I also wanted to mention too, John. I forgot to tell you. I know you're a little older than me, but you were always
10 years. I know, because you're my baby brother's age. I'm sorry.
I don't know if you realize the impact you had on me. I would always watch you and the way you dealt with the young folks, and I learned a lot from you. So that speaks to what Denise just said. You know, you don't never know who's paying attention.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Gary,
I just
thank you.
Thank you for that, John. That's
I appreciate that. And Denise, I just want to piggyback on something that you said. Talk about your family.
Uh-huh.
To me, Denise, you always been a Dixwell girl.
Even when I lived in Milford.
Met you at your Hill House. And I thought I didn't know you snuck out of town on me.
I didn't live in New Haven when I was at Hill House.
You had strong ties. You kept your ties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's something about family. Just this morning, I have my granddaughter comes to my house every morning. I take my granddaughter to school, and
nice.
telling her just the importance of enjoying one another's company. Now, my granddaughter is 11 years old, and I'm 72, and we have this bond it's going to go on forever. The legacy that I'm starting with her, I'm always going to be a part of her life, even though she drives me crazy. The love that we have, not only with the family. There's something about family ties.
Mm-hmm.
Something we got away from it, having family dinners together. That used to be dinners on a regular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now it's a special occasion if you can get the family together to have a dinner. And then when COVID came, COVID made it even worse.
Yeah.
But this Thanksgiving, I feel really good. My wife, my daughter-in-law, they preparing this big meal. They starting to cook it now, and we're all looking having a family dinner where we can just sit down with one another and we can find out what's going on with one another. Those back in this 50s and 60s, that was on a regular everything. When we would all get together at the kitchen table and share a meal together and share our day together. That's what we don't do anymore.
And that's the kind of strength that we want to bring forward. I'm sorry, Gary.
Yeah. You when you talk about I'm thinking of unity in the community. Remember that was one of our old sayings. But that's where we have to get back to. I'm not saying that we're not. Folks are doing some phenomenal things, but that sit down at the table meant a lot. And it wasn't just our table. We sat down at my neighbors. Right over there. I grew up Southwest Drive, Division Street. We were able to go to anyone's home. Any of our friends. We had parents beyond the two. We had several parents throughout the community. Yeah. That's what when I look at this project and seeing what you're doing, I'm envisioning all these things, and I'm thinking too. I'm like, when we talk about the businesses, the African American Black-owned businesses that we had, I wanted to kind of speak to that, and you kind of talk about that and how important that was, and especially in our community. The pharmacies, just several places that we can speak to. If you could just talk a little bit about that, appreciate it.
Oh, I would love to. Gary and John, I'll share with you that this was a shock to me. I was not a baby. I was very well into my adulthood when I discovered this, but I was in other cities that had large Black-owned communities, and I would say something like, the Black doctor I had growing up, or the Black dentist, or and they would look at me like, where was that? Like, like in New Haven, like you didn't, right? And so, when I put this project together, when I conceptualized it, as I said to John, you didn't have to live in Dixwell to be part of the Dixwell community, because if you were Black, either your medical people were there, you partied there because of the Elsa soundtrack, the Monterey, it was world famous for the quality and the celebrity of the artists who performed there. We had Dr. Timpson and Dr. Tillman and Dr. Massey and the obstetricians, Dr. Taylor, and the dentist, his family's in the documentary on food, because his grandfather had a lot to do with that. But my point is, I never grew up not knowing there were Black professionals. They were all right there. Right? I never had this. I never was like 18 and said, "Oh, oh, there's a black doctor. There were always black doctors. There was Unique Boutique. There was Wilmore Pharmacy. There was Key's Funeral Home. I mean, it was the beauticians on Dixwell Avenue. I don't remember the names of any of them. I remember the names of one of them, but not the shops names themselves. But just really rife. We supported black businesses, and black businesses provided community for us. I know Ife talked about her uncle, aunt and uncle owned Unique Boutique. I don't think there's a person of that era who frequented that store, first on Dixwell and then downtown, who, when we speak of it, there's a reverence. It just wasn't where we went to buy things. I remember how I always felt so embraced because I would come in, John, from the suburbs and be shocked. Like I'd walk in and they'd go, dang. I'm like, they know me. Like they don't even see me on a regular and they know me. So they supported and served the community as the other professionals did. And it was just, I think it was one of those silent signals to those of us growing up that all of these things are attainable. I mentioned my uncle who was in education, and there were, Sylvia here. We know the names of so many more. Florence Virtue. And it was just, as I said, it's the thing that I yearn for all young people of color or any marginalized community or identity to know there are people in your skin who walked your path, who have been able to provide and thrive in, and however we can support you in that. But I think, as you both said, a lot of that is by making sure they have community, that they have people who look at them with a glimmer of hope, not a glimmer of disdain, which we also often see, the kind of head shaking we do at young people. We look at them because they dress differently, as I remember we dressed differently, right? We look at them and shake our head like there's something just inherently, unfixably wrong with them. And I know there's many of us in the community who don't do that, but as a larger community, I'd like us to embrace the potential of young people and provide for them the same kind of signposts that most of us had. In New Haven, I discovered, as you said, John, not everywhere. That was shock to me. Like, you all didn't have black doctors in New London, really?
Yeah. Well, that's again, that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
I retired from the fire service, and I'm a big advocate from hiring folk in the communities that we serve.
Yes.
And you can't be what you can't see. So that's why it's important that you see those things. You see those black doctors. You see those black nurses. And that has a major impact on and that's why I became a firefighter, because I didn't know anything about firefighting, but I saw the Ray Nelsons, the George Sweeneys, the Lou Bosleys, all these folks that played a major part in hiring and developing programs to introduce fire careers, those different pathways. Wow. So now here we are in 2024, the end of it. And, as far as future projects, what future projects do you have in mind?
Well, for Forgotten Pioneers, we are planning a part 2. And that will probably be in April. There are many people that came forward. And I want to say again, I can't thank the two of you enough and the rest of the cast for coming forward. And I will just say on air, there were many people who said they wanted to do it, some of whom approached me. I didn't approach them. And as it got closer, they got, I'm just going to say, stage fright. And I was reminded that public speaking is supposed to be the number one fear other than death of Americans. That really hit home for me as I was putting this together, because people were just like, you really? No, I just thought I can't do that in front. So thank you for what you've done. And you've encouraged others. There were people there that day who came forward and said that they want to be part of round 2. So prayerfully, that will be in April. So that's one project I'm working on. I am the founder of a company called Ubuntu Storytellers. Actually, right now it's a program. It's not a company. It's under my company. But Ubuntu Storytellers is comprised of professional storytellers who identify as Black or brown. Now, when I say professional, not all of them were professional storytellers when they came to Ubuntu, but I saw something in them and they were open to being coached so that they could be unprofessional storytellers, the way that you two were open to being coached. And so the whole purpose of Ubuntu Storytellers is to widen the lens through which Black and Brown people are seen. I always say that if you're not one of us, there's essentially three stories. We're victims, we're ne'er-do-wells, or we're super Negroes. We do these extraordinary things with no resources, no support, no parents, no this, no that. That's one story. The other one is, we're victims. And the other is they can't get out of their own way. Those are the three major stories in my experience, if people don't really know us. And all three of those stories exist in our community. I'm very proud of the super Negro stories, and I'm pained by the victim stories, and I understand the ne'er-do-well stories. But in the meantime, there's the stories that the two of you just shared, right? There's the stories of, my tag is, we tell stories of being in the skin we're in, as well as just stories of being. And the whole purpose of that is to get out into the world a broader lens through which to see us and understand it. My code word for it is to de-museumify us, take us off the shelves of the museum and know us as human beings. So Ubuntu Storytellers, we tell where people hire us. I produce shows. We did 3 shows this year at the Sandbox at the Arts Council. And I'm proud to say, I keep forgetting this, we just got nominated for an award. We're finalists in an award for community media. We did a total of 9 shows at WPAA Television in Wallingford, and we're nominated for that, and the award ceremony is December 9th in Mystic. So we may have that feather in our cap, but in the meantime, we know that we are changing the perspective through which people see us, which is important to me because these are people who run programs and do community service and, have those, what I call the white savior programs. And they get an opportunity to see that the people they serve are humans with individuality and talents of their own. And it changes the way that they deliver service and interact. So that's a major part of what I do. And then as a storyteller, I perform separate from Ubuntu Storytellers, but all of that is under the umbrella of my real work, which is I am an anti-racism leadership developer. So through Ubuntu Storytellers, I facilitate workshops with people to help them understand, as we used to say in the 60s, if you ain't part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Mm-hmm. So we might understand racism is there. We might not understand how we individually can disrupt that system. So that's essentially what I have going on. Without my calendar, I don't really know, but I know that's the broad base of what I do. And I'm just really, really, really blessed that I have phenomenal people working with me. Jill Snyder and I will be working on a project. She's doing a project, Lucy and Lois Tritton, I hope I said their names right. They were the last 2 slaves auctioned on the New Haven Green. I know that's news to some people. That New Haven had enslaved people, and that they were auctioned on the New Haven Green. So she's done extensive research on them, and she's just invited me to work on a project with her. There's going to be something on the Green during Juneteenth, honoring their contribution to New Haven.
Wow, so. That's amazing. But again, those are the great things that folks are doing that need to people like. I'm just thinking about the event at the at Concat, and I'm just watching people. Right, everybody's telling their stories. I'm watching my sister, and it's like I'm watching her, and she's going through. I think she's just going through her whole life. And how rich it was because of the community house and Dixwell community and the relationships that are established. The reason why I'm bringing that up too is that speaks to the richness, the happiness in our souls. That's what I saw in that room. And then after the event, folks were like, "Oh, I want to." Folks now they want to tell their story because now they're thinking about the Monterey, the Elks Club. Yep. You're thinking about all these great folks that they were able to experience the thing called life, and we have to be grateful for that. Yes. I was in Concat the other day, and I spoke to this young lady that was in one of the programs, and how it just uplifted her and made a difference. And that's what I'm talking about. We're out here we're in the business of saving souls and putting people in a place where they can take care, educate their family. And that speaks to what John has done over his whole life. So John, if you could just speak to, the Little League, some of the things that community and the Little League, just the Little League itself, who serves over 350 kids a year, how important that work is, the mentoring, being that mentor, making a difference in that child's life. If you could just say a few things pertaining to that, John.
Sure, I can. It's you never, like you said earlier, you never realize what you mean to people. You never realize that. And this is something we started in our church. And you mentioned something about the generation gap.
Mm-hmm.
We have to learn how to start. Each generation have to learn how to talk one to another.
Yep.
Yes.
We just can't. Older people can't look down on younger people and say, "I told you not to do it the way I did."
Yeah.
Things are different. We at the older generation have to understand. The younger generation is coming up in different time. Things are completely different. We have to learn how to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And once we start learning how to work together and we can work in unison, I think things will get better.
And John, we're at a time now that we definitely need that. That's been I belong to several organizations, and that generation gap it's something we definitely have to work on. We have to meet the younger generation in the middle. I know we've been there, we've done that, but they're here. They're learning and they've learned. And we have to find a way to sit back and listen to what they're saying. We don't have to agree. We can say, well, we did this way. Okay, but I think this would work. And I've learned so much from meeting with these young folks and listening and not telling them what's right and what's wrong, and taking that and bring it to what my life experience was, but listening and learning from what there is. And we can get a lot from that. And John, you brought that up, and that's what was on my mind, because that's one of the most frustrating things right now is to, we get in these meetings and we try to bring in young folks to be a part of our organizations. But if you insult them or you tell them they're wrong, because they don't want to be in that room, you got to get them in the room, listen to what their recommendations, and meet them in the middle. Come up with what's going to move whatever your initiative is forward. So I'm glad you brought that up. I
was a part of this program, and they asked me, John, you give so much back. You give so much back to what I was doing. But then I told them, I'm receiving more than I'm giving.
Yes.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street. I want to give to them, and the same token, I want to learn from them too.
Mm-hmm.
It's a meeting of the minds.
Yes.
I'm not better than you because I'm older than you, and you're not better than me because you think you know more than me. We have to.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so.
Yeah.
And I bet you, John, you listen to that 11-year-old granddaughter.
Oh, you know what? She thinks she's smarter than me.
Yeah.
I'll never tell her, but she is. I'll never tell her.
They'll tell you, especially them little girls.
Oh,
Yeah, and I just want to say, as the female on the panel, every man I know knows that this is one of the messages I always deliver. If you have a young female in your life, a daughter, a granddaughter, a niece, love her unconditionally and let her know her value.
Mm.
And we as a people are strengthened just by that one little thing. When a woman knows her value, she lifts everybody and gives that same respect and gift to everybody else. And that, in my humble opinion, it's not my academic background, but observationally, that's what strengthens us. And it's so easy for young Black women, not because of who we are as Black people, but what the larger culture tells them they are and are not. It's so easy for little Black girls to not know their worth, their value, and their beauty. And we have to work extra hard to counteract all those less than messages that are out there. So I say that to thank you both for what you've already shared about the relationships with the young girls in their life. But uh, that's just, that's like the highest thing on my list. It's like, respect that young girl, let her know she is beautiful, she is valuable, she makes a contribution, and she can walk through the world unapologetically.
You know, since you said that, I want to share what my mother used to say to me. When my mother saw that I started becoming interested in girls, she always told me, treat that girl like you want someone to treat your sister. And always stuck with me.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mom. And John, I've known you for a minute, and I can't claim to know everything about you, but I can say that everything that I've seen about you would reflect that you heard her. So thank you. Thank you for that. Yep.
So, and next, I just wanted you guys to share some of your fondest memories. I mean, in the Dixwell community. Maybe at the Elk Club, maybe wherever. If you can kind of share a couple of things pertaining to that.
Well, can I go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, it wasn't about the Elks or the Monterey. I was a member of the Hill House basketball team, and we used to get meal money. We used to get $1.50 for every game. That was a lot of money. We would go get we would stop at McDonald's, and I would spend 75 cents at McDonald's, but I would save the other 75 cents for the Q House. Because in the queue, I was at the Monterey or the Golden, but I was at the Q House.
Yep.
Well, I mentioned the Monterey. I was just thinking about jazz. I figured you might like jazz.
I'm just going back to my young.
Yeah. I wasn't. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I wasn't old enough to go to the Monterey or any of those clubs I mentioned, like the years when they were really vibrant. Of course, I checked out the Elks once or twice when I became an adult. But the Monterey is an era I personally missed, but I can remember my parents going. It was the Monterey and the Recorder Club, which I didn't think about until we did this project, and the Democratic Club, and they were all on Dixwell Avenue. And you talk about dressed, oh my God, I'm talking about like elbow length gloves, my God, you would have thought they were going to the White House. So fond memories of that. But my fondest memories, I'm sorry?
What about that club?
I couldn't hear you.
Street in Nashville. What was that? There was a club on Henry Street and
you broke up.
On the club that was on Henry Street in Ashland. They used to bring in a lot of
soundtrack or sound something.
Soundtrack. Yeah.
Golden Gate. Yeah, soundtrack. Yeah. And I think that was later later for me. But I remember that one. They had good music.
Back then, go to a club when we were 18, so I was allowed to go to the soundtrack because you can go back.
Okay. Yeah. Well, my memories really come from from two things: from the businesses, the Black professionals, and how warmly they greeted us. It never felt like strange going to a doctor and it's going to be this strange person. That there were people that they lived for a long time. They lived in our communities, and when they didn't live in our communities, they still stayed connected to the communities because they were at the soundtrack and the Elks and the Monterey. And then the other thing was just the families. I lived on Admiral Street, and Karen and Patty Bates and Jimmy Ruth and Vivian Moore and Raymond Horner. We were the kids on that street, and we were our own community. And the parents, as you talked about, going into one another's houses and being fed everywhere. It was just a warm nuclear kind of place to start out in life. We were just really felt secure. And I mentioned again, my Uncle Charlie, who was at Winchester, he lived on Dixwell Avenue until he moved to Moreland. He lived on Dixwell Avenue over one of the dentists. So again, I don't know which one. And my mother, which I don't think about often, my mother was a phenomenal designer. That wasn't her career later. She was a teacher, but she had a shop on Dixwell Avenue called DEEKs, Kays, it was right between Admiral and Henry. And what they said about my mother is when you went to these formal events, when you went to the Elks thing and all of that, every woman who looked like she had a perfect figure was because she was wearing Dot Manning Keys' design. When my mother got a hold of you, you had no figure flaws. When I talk about custom design, that's what it was. Oh, and I could remember her saying, "Oh, she's a little high waisted, so I'm going to drop the waistline down for her. She ain't got much back there. Let me do something about." Or she got too much back there. Let me do something about. And she needs a little lift here. So, and my mother was such an influence on me growing up that I believe it was my second grade teacher, that half a year I was there, she asked could she meet my mother, because when the teachers would say something, I would mull it around and then I would say out loud, "Yep, that's right," because that's what my mother said.
Wow.
And so this particular teacher said, "I got to meet this woman," and I remember bringing her to my mother's shop on Dixwell Avenue. So those are that neighborhood for me was Leave It to Beaver. Remember Leave It to Beaver? I thought that looked like the perfect utopian neighborhood. Leave It to Beaver. What was the other one? Donna Reed. That was Dixwell for me. I wasn't wishing I lived Leave It to Beaver's life, but we were living our own life.
That's
that
right.
was yeah.
And that's yeah. And that was a great, I'm the baby in the family, but I was fortunate enough. I have 3 older sisters, and my beloved brother has passed. But they all, everybody grew up in that community. And I'm just thinking about I was looking at the Freddie Fixer, looking at some of the old footage, and lo and behold, there's my sister, my youngest sister, who's 70 now. Oh, I'm sorry. She's 70 now. But there she is with she's a cheerleader in the parade.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm laughing. And she was probably, about 8 or 9 years old.
Yep.
And then I'm starting to think about my brother, my uncles my Uncle Bunky used to box at the Q House, and
wow.
just so many things were there. But we had that hub, we had a safe place to go to. So that's so important now for especially the youth in this current environment. They have to have that safe place. So what you're doing, history, is so important, because once you know your history, you know where you're coming from, you know about your rich roots, and you know your self-worth.
Yes.
So we're in a time where, we didn't think. I had an 86-year-old man approach me the other day, and he looked at me, and I don't want to get into this, but he looked at me and said, "I never thought I'd have to go through this again."
Oh, we can only imagine what this is.
When he said that, he had this expression on his face, and I was just like, I said, "Well, you've been through it. You know how to survive it, and we'll get through it also. We have some strong folks, and we have strong communities, and we can just lean on each other to and keep doing what we're doing. We're doing some great
strategize.
Strategize.
Talk
about the good stuff. We always talk about the bad stuff. So I think the work you're doing, it's bringing up a lot of the great stuff that we're doing, that we're doing, and the great people that have a great, amazing impact on our community. And that's why I keep bringing up the Little League, John, because that Little League has impacted so many folks. There's folks from the Little League that I coach that are in the fire department. So when I see that, when you see the fruits of your labor, that's what feeds you. That's what energizes you. Because unfortunately, you got some folks say, "Well, I don't want to get, I'm gonna go to work, do what I have to do, and that's it. I'm not getting involved." But somebody got involved in your life, and that's what the New Haven community did. They were involved in all our lives. Yeah. And to this day, I speak to folks that I grew up on Division Street. I mean, here we are, 55 years later, and it's like they're my sister, they're my brother. So when I talk to them, I just think about being in their living room, having dinner, on Thanksgiving. But those things mean so much. So we got about 10 minutes left. So I just wanted to what impact are you hoping for through this project?
I can speak to that in a minute, but I just want to insert one thing, because you raised this for me, Gary, with the 86-year-old man who approached you. Another memory from my childhood is the political conversations that were held in my kitchen with Black leaders in our community, some of whom went on to have national prominence and national influence, but they called them kitchen table talks, and they were in the privacy of our homes where other people couldn't get access to what they were thinking. They planned out things, and I'll give you an example because this is a piece of history that will get lost. We don't have a black state treasurer by accident. That was strategized in the late 50s and realized in the 60s. And a group of mostly men at the time, black men, went to the governor at the time and basically said, look, y'all gonna give us something. And that position at the time was seen as a position that was mostly name and not a lot of power. And the people who had strategized knew that there wasn't power because the people who had held that position hadn't utilized the power. So this is negotiation. So they essentially said, well, okay, we know it doesn't have much power, but we'll take that. That was an exchange. Now, I don't know if you're supposed to say this stuff publicly, but if you know me, you know I don't really care. What I care about is not beating people down publicly, but I'll tell the truth publicly. So, and so this deal was struck way back then, and I could name the first black treasurer. I won't. And then the second black treasurer was Hank Parker. And when Hank became treasurer, he understood this is Connecticut. How could the Treasury not hold any power? Right? All the money in Connecticut. He understood that position had power, and he leveraged it. And then the next one that came after him leveraged it. And they were all black. There was one white state treasurer since that deal was made way back then. And he actually got indicted for something, and there hasn't been another one. There hasn't been another white one since. They've all been black. But that was strategized in the kitchens of Dixwell and implemented in the State House. And those people who held that position, they met with these folk. They didn't just get the position and disappear. They met on a regular basis. What are the opportunities as state treasurer to lift up the black community? And then I think one of the people that people credit as really embracing that and honoring that, you might know his name, is Frank Borges, who is from New Haven. But when he became state treasurer, then people started looking and saying, what did we give away? But I say that to say this was visionaries in the 50s that said, Democrats want our vote, or they're going to give us something. And we're going to pretend we don't think that's much, but we'll take it because we're negotiating. So that's an example I lived and witnessed. There are hundreds of examples like that from people who are visionaries, put their egos in the back pocket, and have a plan that's larger than self or in the moment. I went into all of that now because I think that's where we are right now. That's exactly what we need to be doing. I've said to people, I don't want to hear about what we survived. I'm not interested in survival. I'm interested in disruption. That's who I am. So, okay. So what do I hope comes out? Oh, go ahead.
I know. I just wanted to get John in for a minute.
Okay, yeah.
We got 3 minutes left.
Okay, guys, this is gonna be quick. I always paid attention to you because I'm impressed. I read about all your accomplishments that's going on in your life now, and it make me very proud. But I was always aware of your family, your brother Clarence. He was always influential person to me because he stood out. He stood out in the community. He worked for Captain Market. He worked for Captain Market back then, and he had a lot of as a young African American guy. He had a lot of credibility with that organization, Captain Market, back in those. I'm talking about 1965, 1966. They gave him a lot of responsibility as a young black man, and your sister Ramona. She always stood out. She always stood out to me. Even if they were a lot older than me, I looked up to them. Because I had, like I said, I had a lot of friends down in the Aspen Street area. A lot of friends. And your brother and sisters always stood out. They always stood out to me in all their activities that they were doing. It was not that everybody was doing such things so great. They stood out to me. And it made a difference. You came along, and I was able to work with you. you and Gary Chambers in the baseball field. And that meant a lot because you guys were some sharp young individuals coming up behind you guys, David, Gary, yourself, David Moy, you guys kept that program going. And from the Forgotten Pioneers program, Kurt McBride was there. He wanted to mention his father, who was the president of Pop Smith Little League for a long time, and he wanted to bring that up. So, Denise,
Kurt's on the list for our April performance.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. And I do want to say for Legacy, we do intend to have the video available, and we'd like it to be available to libraries and to schools in New Haven. So that's one of the outcomes.
Okay.
But thank you.
In closing, just one last remark from both of you.
Mm-hmm. Mine is thank you. Thank you to the community. Thank you especially to the two of you and the other brave souls who joined us that day and shared remembrances of the strength of the Dixwell community.
And John?
I just want to echo what Denise said. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for allowing my voice to be heard.
Yes.
Because a lot of people don't think their voice mean anything. And just listen to you guys. I appreciate the comments that you said. Thank you again.
Well, thank you. And again, I've learned so much from just every time I speak to you. I sit back and I'm in awe. Just the rich history, because I was young. I was a baby,
yeah.
And then at some point I wasn't even here. So just to just kind of walking me through my memory, especially with my brother and my sisters, and we've been very fortunate and blessed, to say the least. And I treasure our relationships, and I treasure the work that both of you are doing. And I just encourage our folks to keep doing it, and let's move forward. What they're going to do is Harry will start playing some music, so we might have another 15 seconds or something.
Okay.
But again, the impact of your work has been extraordinary. It's I just sit back and listen to people and just thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let me tell you, one of your brother was Albert Barham.
Yeah.
Yes, I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting. I'm a
Thank you.
Positions, looking at the void in myself if I was missing. Better watch the way you going. Gotta go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, what you go, we counting blessings. And I know that for certain.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Hating, swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Cause this is my
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH